Hello everybody, this is Kirby over yonder, and just because Season 6 is my least favorite season of Adventure Time, doesn't mean it's without its good episodes. If anything, this season being so mixed in quality actually makes the good episodes stand out a lot more. And in fact, surprisingly enough, the hardest part of making this video was ranking my top 5. Which is strange, because that's usually the easy part. The hard part of these lists is usually picking a 9 and 10 spot that I'm happy with. But I guess since there aren't really that many episodes I love in Season 6, there weren't as many to choose from, despite it being longer than the first 4 seasons. But with all that out of the way, these are my top 10 Adventure Time Season 6 episodes. At number 10, we have Everything's Jake. Man, that Futurama revival's looking pretty good, huh? Okay, but for real, Everything's Jake is just fun. It's a nice little one-off in which we see Jake explore this world that's both created and destroyed within the same episode. In that sense, it sort of feels like the inverse of last season's Pahoy, complete with cuts back to Finn and everything. You get a good sense of isolation here too, with Jake not knowing anyone despite being super famous. I really like the design of this world. They make great use out of just different shades of yellow and orange. And okay, fine, I'll admit it, as a huge Futurama fan, this episode certainly appeals to me. I mean, Billy West is basically just doing his voices for Fry, Farnsworth, and Zapp Brannigan, and it's wonderful. His performances here are just excellent all around. My only real complaint is that he never gets to use his Zoidberg voice. I also appreciate this quiet little somber moment at the end. It's not the deepest episode out there, but it's nice juxtaposition to end on a bit more of a melancholic note. Everything's Jake is definitely one of the more well-balanced episodes of the season. It's a bit of a jack-of-all-trades episode that doesn't excel at anything in particular, but does a good number of things really well. At number 9, we have The Visitor. I think The Visitor might be the most grounded episode of Season 6. Well, aside from the intro at least. The tone, the setting, the stakes, it's all very mundane, which I know sounds like a bad thing. But it works here because it's used to heighten the character drama between Finn and Martin. It's nice to see them interact in a more low-stakes setting. We don't really get that at any other point in the series. I like Finn's little character journey here. He clearly wants to understand his dad and have a normal relationship with him. But at a certain point, he just has to understand that that's not who Martin is. They'll never have the type of relationship that Finn wants them to have. It's really sad, but very profound. Martin telling Finn about why he was abandoned is also very interesting in hindsight because most of it is true. Finn was left on a boat. There was a tiger involved. We see a quick glimpse of the Guardian. And we know that Martin did intend to go back for Finn. Him being stressed about Minnie also makes a lot of sense because, from her perspective, he just abandoned her with no real explanation. It's always so cool when a scene can be recontextualized by events that we see later on. Also, the villagers are really cute and I like their designs a lot. At number 8, we have Evergreen. Evergreen is such a unique episode. We almost never get to see the world this early on. We also get some interesting lore reveals, like the elementals, where the crown came from, and the first Catalyst comet. But at the same time, the episode doesn't just feel like an 11-minute lore dump. There's an actual story here to latch onto. Gunther himself makes for a really likable protagonist. I love everything about his design and childlike personality. His relationship with Master Evergreen is so damn tragic. The way Gunther is constantly looking up to and wanting to be like this person who abuses and mistreats him, which is what ultimately led to him dooming them both. Love the juxtaposition here with this Ice King ending. It somehow manages to be both really funny and really haunting. Evergreen is a fascinating cautionary tale with a very unique setting, characters, and world building. At number 7, we have Joshua and Margaret Investigations. This is such a fun origin story for Jake and his powers. Joshua and Margaret are so entertaining. I love their old-timey way of speaking. The back and forths they have with each other this episode are so great. I could honestly watch a whole series of just these two. Margaret especially is just so chaotic here, I love it. Watching her go after this alien while also being super pregnant is really fun. We also get a solid explanation as to how Jake got his powers, but I appreciate how the episode doesn't just lay all its cards out here. There's still some mystery here as to who this alien is and why he got Joshua pregnant. I like that the episode leaves room for this to be explored more later on in the series. I also love that this episode has two different screw the audience moments back to back. First with it turning out that Joshua gave birth to Jake and not Margaret, and the second being that Jake never actually knew how he was born, and the whole time we were watching this, he was never actually telling it to Finn and BMO. It's just a really fun episode, with the only thing holding it back being the fact that Wyatt is in it. All my homies hate Wyatt. He's literally the worst. He deserves to stay in the first Dead World. At number 6, we have the Pajama War. Season 6 has a lot of these big, lore-heavy episodes, so it's nice to just get a chill, hangout episode like Pajama War in the bunch. Well, sorta. I appreciate all of the parallels between this and Slumber Party Panic, especially with Tree Trunks' hot buns. But for real, it really shows how much these characters have changed since Season 1. How Finn is no longer obsessing over getting with Princess Bubblegum, and that PB has significantly mellowed out about protecting her kingdom. It's just so great to see the two casually hang out without much of a conflict at all. It's really nice to see PB open up to Finn about her regrets with the way she handled her kingdom, and to see Finn open up about his relationship with Martin. Even if it's a little out of place coming before the visitor, it's still a sweet moment. But on the complete opposite end of the spectrum, we have the absolute chaos that is the Candy People subplot. It's honestly just so ridiculous, but weirdly enough, does a really good job balancing out the Finn and PB stuff. On their own, I don't think either of these stories would work as 11-minute episodes, but when paired together, they work really well. I also love Jake's role in this episode, as he just doesn't care about anything that's going on. Pajama War is a great episode that's able to balance being both really sweet and really silly. At number 5, we have Wake Up. It's the first part of the big season premiere, and as such, I think it does a great job setting up the stakes for the following episode. I love this conversation Finn and Jake have near the beginning. It makes sense that Finn would be so anxious about meeting his dad. I like the realism in how skeptical he is about this whole situation. Admittedly, a lot of this episode is just set up for the next one, but it's the good kind of setup that's able to hold your attention. We need to establish just how dangerous the Citadel is in order to understand the risk Finn and Jake are taking by going there. It's also really fun seeing Finn and Jake escort the old man Prismo. Love the design of these Prismo demons he spits out, as well as the visual of Finn and Jake blasting them with their flashlights. I love just how intense the last minute of this episode is, with the Lich just suddenly waking up. The way he kills the old man Prismo is so brutal. I also just love how abrupt the ending is, it's so good. Wake Up is a really exciting start to the season, and an excellent setup for possibly the biggest episode of the show thus far. At number 4, we have Is That You? Is That You is such a trip, man, I love it. Such a creative use of time travel. I love just how needlessly complicated Prismo's plan is. The episode does a good job lampshading all of its contrivances. The episode doesn't go too deep into the how and why of everything, because doing so would sort of be missing the point. The point is to have fun with and explore this high-concept premise. It can be a little hard to wrap your head around, but that's sort of part of the fun. This is also a very creative way of doing a pseudo-clip show episode. There's just something very morbidly funny about seeing all these Time Paradox Jake clones explode upon Finn interacting with them. Oh hi off-model Season 2, Jake. It sure has been a while, hasn't it? Now, admittedly, I'm usually not the biggest fan of bringing dead characters back to life, since it can oftentimes feel like a bit of a cop-out. But I think in this case, the fact that Prismo had a backup plan for in case he died actually makes his actions in Wake Up make a lot more sense, since it would have been pretty irresponsible of him to risk himself dying just so Finn can meet his dad. Plus, come on, it's Prismo. It's also the episode to give us the Finn sword, which is probably my favorite sword in the whole show. Is That You is one of the most ambitious episodes of the whole series, and personally, I think it paid off. At number 3, we have The Tower. The Tower is such a fascinating exploration of Finn's emotional state after the events of Escape from the Citadel. It's interesting to see how Finn's depression manifests in this ghost arm that's building a tower to steal his dad's arm. It's a great marriage of an absurd concept with real human emotions. It's a surprisingly funny episode too. I love just how morbid the lyrics to Finn's nursery rhyme are. BMO getting buried by the block of ice. The way the tower just falls down at the end. As well as just everything about Carol. Seriously, I love just how weirdly aggressive she is about everything. I also liked her conversation with Finn about running away from her problems. It was really interesting. But I really like where Finn's journey ends up taking him here. It's funny actually, throughout the episode, Jake and PB are constantly arguing back and forth as to whether or not what Finn's doing is emotionally healthy, but in the end they were kinda both right. PB was right in the sense that Finn tearing Martin's arm off wasn't going to help him, but Jake was also right in the sense that Finn needed to go through all of that in order to properly work through his emotions. And I love that at the end of the episode, Finn isn't just completely back to normal now, he still has some stuff he needs to work through, and that's perfectly fine. It's a really thought-provoking episode, and one that I always enjoy revisiting. At number 2, we have Escape from the Citadel. Man, where do you even begin with this episode? It's just nuts. I really love the design for the Citadel itself. The colors they use here really make it pop out when compared to other locations in the show. It all just feels very otherworldly. I also love the subversion here. That Martin isn't some grand hero like Finn, or even some over-the-top villain. He's just a crummy guy who doesn't want Finn in his life. Like, it's honestly kind of depressing just how much of a non-factor Finn is to him. And I love that Jake is basically by Finn's side the entire time, showing that while he's not blood related to Finn, he is his true family. The Lich is just awesome here. This is where his character peaked in my opinion. Ron Perlman's performance here is absolutely chilling. Not to mention the disgusting way the flesh is formed on his body. It's no wonder we don't get to see most of it. Cartoon Network probably wouldn't have allowed it. And man, it's not even the best part of the episode. The scene of Finn trying to prevent Martin from leaving is just awesome. I love the way Finn's big grass arm was animated. They put so much detail into it. And to see it snap off after 5 full seasons of foreshadowing, it's jaw-dropping. And it's beautifully punctuated by just a quiet little scene after. It's really touching the way Jake wraps his arm around Finn and tells him it's gonna be okay. Even though I have problems with the way the arm arc is handled later on, nothing will take away just how beautiful this moment is. Escape from the Citadel is a phenomenal episode. I was honestly shocked that I didn't put this at number 1, and I'm sure many of you are too. However, one episode was just barely able to beat it. At number 1, we have Germaine. Okay, look, let me explain. For the longest time, I considered Escape from the Citadel to be the best Season 6 episode, and it wasn't even much of a contest. And honestly, objectively speaking, it probably still is. But I don't know, upon this most recent rewatch, something about Germaine just really resonated with me. First off, I really love what they did with Germaine here. I'm sure some sicko out there misses the weird prototype Germaine from Crystals of Power, but as far as I'm concerned, that Germaine can remain dead and buried. I love his more grounded, down-to-earth personality. Finn and Jake are just such upbeat characters that Germaine being there makes for such an interesting dynamic. Kinda makes me wish the show used him more after this point. I also love Bryce and all his talk about eating Germaine. And the Booba Sousa-san is an absolute banger. All that stuff is great, but what really makes me love this episode is the way Germaine's grief is handled. I lost the life of my dog not too long ago, and because of that, I still find myself somewhat possessive over some of his things. Sometimes I'll just go to the room in my basement where he spent his last few days and just sit there for no real reason at all. And because of that, I really relate with Jermaine and his struggle here. The way he feels like he owes it to his parents to protect their things because he doesn't think he was good enough as a son. I can also relate to the feeling of thinking that I'm a disappointment to certain people. And the dynamic between him and Jake just feels so real. Like, yeah, Joshua probably did play favorites a little bit because Jake was the one with powers. Much like with Dad's Dungeon back in Season 3, it shows that while Joshua is by no means a bad father, he also wasn't perfect, and in a lot of ways didn't give his kids what they needed. Which granted, still makes him better than about 90% of the parents on this show, but still. It's totally not Jake's fault that he was born with powers and Jermaine wasn't, but at the same time, Jermaine is also perfectly valid in feeling envious of Jake's relationship with his father. So to see him just let all their stuff burn, and to finally let go of this burden on his back, it's just so cathartic. I don't know, maybe a week from now I'll go back to saying Escape from the Citadel is the best Season 6 episode, but for right now, as of this specific moment in time, Jermaine is the episode that I enjoy the most. Or maybe Water Park Prank is the actual best one, and I'm just crazy. Who knows? Like I said before, Season 6 doesn't have a lot of episodes that I can say I love, so I only have one honorable mention this time around. And that would go to the episode Dentist. This is a really fun episode exploring the dynamic between Finn and Tiffany. This is a good example of why I want to kill you is a line that lives in my head rent-free. I will say though that even though Season 6 has a lower quantity of episodes I enjoy, in terms of the quality of those episodes, I think I actually like these more than my top 10 list of Season 5. 5 is still a better season as a whole, but if I were to choose the best episodes of Season 5 or the best episodes of Season 6, I'd probably go with 6, even if only by a hair or two. Please let me know what your favorite Season 6 episodes are in the comments, and with that, Kirby, out.